principle of welfare. Second of all, the efficacy of welfare distribution. Third of all, about social stigma and the dignity of welfare recipient. And lastly, and briefly, I'm going to talk about rehabilitation, reintegration of these individuals. So firstly, about the principle of welfare and the responsibility of the states. Because what we heard from the government at the affirmative bench was that the government has a duty to protect the basic minimum living of individual people. Now this is true, but we believe the negative team believes that the government has a responsibility not just to protect the physical or the material well-being of its citizens, but also the right to pursue a cultural happiness. And this is simply because we recognize that humans live not only just to survive, but we think that individuals have a right to live, to enjoy life, to seek happiness and meaning in life. So we prefer cash payment over provision of goods and services, precisely because it maximizes the choice that people have within that limited amount of budget that they are provided. So for example, if you're provided a food stamps, the menu of food that you can choose is very limited. You can't consume or enjoy a moderate, reasonable amount of alcoholic beverage. You can't go to a vacation once in a while with your family that you may enjoy every once in a year. So as a consequence, we believe that the government has a responsibility to protect the cultural right of the people, and it has to protect it by being as inclusive as possible. So second of all, the efficacy of welfare distribution, because what we heard from the government bench was to say that provision of welfare comes at a cost of huge amount of waste. And the example that they constantly rant about was about the addiction of gamblers. Now, number one, it is extremely offensive to label people who reasonably enjoy gambling as a waste of society, like oftentimes welfare recipient who lives in poverty and suffers stigma and self-shame by receiving these kind of welfare. It is perfectly reasonable for them to enjoy a reasonable amount of enjoyment and entertainment out of these kind of gambling. But second of all, even if it is a problem that these people waste money as a consequence of gambling, we don't think this policy necessarily solves this in a reasonable degree, because the root cause of these problems is the addiction. The root cause of addiction is a mental health issue, and not the fact that we provide a welfare in the form of cash. So they can easily go get a loan from a loan shark or underground loan shark anywhere, or even worse, they can oftentimes, what happens in reality is that they can exchange the good that they are received, and they can exchange that or resell it on the web, for example, and they use that money to continue gambling. So the proper solution to the problem of gambling addiction is not to take away the freedom and the choice of these individuals, but is to provide more counseling and provision of mental health, medical care for these individuals, which we are perfectly okay with providing. Before we move on, sure.
In our product, receiving some welfare, people can earn money compensatorily and fulfill their cultural well-being in our product also.
I'm sorry.
So in our product, people can earn money compensatorily and fulfill their cultural well-being.
No, you can't have it both ways. You can't say that the government will provide basic goods and services in the form of material good, and then they can also receive cash. Because in our policy, we have this is a trade-off debate in which how we provide these individuals with choice, or how we can control a reasonable, sustainable welfare system. So moving on to my third issue, which is the social stigma and the dignity of welfare recipient. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, already in the status quo, we believe the welfare recipient already receives severe amount of negative stigma from the society, with the exact rhetoric used by today's government bench. That these individuals are a burden of the society, these individuals are irrational individuals who can't even manage their own money, these are worthless individuals and we shouldn't care for them. We think this is severely harmful for the physical and psychological well-being of these individuals, in the sense that these individuals are oftentimes target of discrimination and bullies, psychological harm in the sense that these individuals oftentimes feel self-shame that they have to receive welfare from the public, and oftentimes that creates a vicious cycle from them, and trying to escape from reality, they fall into the trap of continuation of addiction of gambling. We believe the status quo is extremely important in that the government, the state, recognize these individuals' dignity and humanity and certain level of ability to manage their own money and provide them cash, ladies and gentlemen, that they recognize them not as subhuman or second-class citizens, but similar to any one of us in our society. We believe that if we take this policy, it it causes two conclusions. The first is it sends the message to the welfare recipient that the government has abandoned you, has basically abandoned you. The government no longer recognizes you as a first-class citizen or an individual with humanity and dignity as same as anyone in our society. We recognize you as a special second-class citizens that do not have rational ability to control their own life, and we would abandon you. But second of all, that has negative implication to societal perception against these welfare recipients. So the society will be more vicious against these welfare recipients and recognizes that. Even the state recognizes these individuals are uncontrollable, irrational individuals who can't even manage their cash money. And as a consequence of that, we think the negative discrimination, bullying, and addition to more self-shame would increase as a consequence of that. We think that is disastrous. Okay, so my final point is how do we actually achieve rehabilitation and reintegration of welfare recipients? Because certain amount of their analysis was true. We don't believe that every individual who received welfare are individuals who are irrational, completely out of control, and who can't manage their money and get addicted to gambling. But we do recognize that a small amount of individuals are like that, as they said. But for those even for those individuals, we think this policy is damaging because ultimately these individuals, at some point in their life, they have to get out of the welfare program system. We have to teach them how to manage their own money. How will we be able to educate these individuals to manage their own money when we provide them with basic goods and services and electricity and water? We believe that by providing a fixed amount of money and allowing them to make decisions. So for example, if they gamble off half of their welfare cash this month, it will be hard for them to purchase other things like clothing or good foods, through that process of success and failure, these individuals can gradually learn and understand how to manage their own money. We believe the provision of basic goods and services is extremely paternalistic and deprives these individuals from understanding and controlling and managing their cash. We are very proud of this.